Welcome to the Orange Pew. Welcome to the spring edition of the Orange Pew, and we're excited to be here today.
Yes,
this
very
is Palm Sunday. So happy Easter,
Amazing.
Happy
everyone.
Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter.
He is
everyone.
risen.
He is risen indeed.
He's risen
Amen.
indeed.
Yes, we're excited to be able to come to our CLA expressions and to our POC network and other guests that are tuning in for this special edition. I hope that you've had a good Lent season. I'm not sure what you gave up for 40 days, if it was social media or food or coffee, but I pray that whatever I see, Pastor Doug is drinking coffee.
I say at times, I say, Jesus, I'll go whatever you want me to do, wherever you want me to go. But please don't speak to me about coffee.
And I see it's hid behind you.
It's hidden behind my cup.
Were you trying to do that on purpose?
Well, water's good to take care of.
I see, okay.
So I'll do
Coffee's
both.
a
But-
so clearly, Pastor Doug is not giving up coffee for Lent. But
and
anyway,
I hope spring break was good for everybody too. Yeah. You went away for spring break.
Yep.
You had a good time.
Yep. We're gonna do. I hope that we're gonna be able to talk about Bangladesh because poorest nation, one of the most needy places in the world, and how can CLA, get involved? It's really something. So we'll
So the
see.
May episode, maybe we'll talk Bangladesh.
Who
knows?
Stay tuned, maybe.
Stay tuned.
stay
Okay,
tuned.
so our
Yeah.
guest
I'm so excited.
right
Hey.
there.
I'm
happy to
so
be here.
excited.
Get a close up. Matt Bender.
Hi.
Matthew Bender
So
in
this
the house.
this is
Happy to
pretty
be here.
exciting.
Sorry about the pew.
Oh yeah,
okay.
welcome to the
It's
Orange
okay.
Pew. It's a real pew.
What's the comfort
It's
level
comfortable.
like?
Like a rock would be comparable
So
to
the-
a big
the current
boulder.
chairs in the
A big
auditorium
boulder.
Are better.
Yes.
Imagine this is what we sat on for like 20 years.
A wooden board would be more comfortable.
Oh my. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Are you
see
Gen
that.
Z? Are you
Yes.
Gen-
I'm
yeah.
on.
So
I'm
here's
on
a
the
here's a statement.
Last.
Yeah.
tail
So
end.
here's a
Yeah.
statement from Gen Z to all those people who built CLA and now remember we went from hard pews. Remember hard pews?
Yeah, I remember
Like no,
when I was a kid.
There was
yeah.
no. So
No.
these
No cushion. This is more
these were a
cushion.
step up. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were kind of soft.
That's tough. That's tough. I
So
feel-
all the Gen Z that are sitting in those very comfortable theater seats.
Yeah, maybe the whole point of it
grateful.
was then because they'll be more attentive because they're not as cushiony. So
Maybe.
you'll be more
So
dialed
people
in
fall
on the
asleep
sermon.
more.
Yes, and
No,
now
yeah.
people fall asleep more. So
Okay, well, we're going to get into some things here. I am so grateful that in God's sovereignty, in God's sovereignty, He brought Matt to CLA and to young adults and to pastoral ministry. It is an unusual journey. You're going to love this story today. A story of redemption, a story of call, a story of mission, a story of fruitfulness.
yeah.
And this is, again, an opportunity for our church, but also the network to hear a great testimony. So we're going to start with you, Matt, and Doug, and I'll interrupt you a couple of times for clarity or whatever,
amazing.
but Doug's pointing to me, the interrupter. So you were attending Trinity Western. Let's set this up. So you were attending Trinity Western. You were a young adult doing a BA.
yeah,
You were not a follower of Jesus Christ.
yes,
You had your
that's
own agenda, and it was wildly interrupted by Jesus Christ, like Saul on the road to Damascus. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you became a follower of Jesus?
yeah, I feel like when I look back at my whole story of life that led up to my moment of encounter for the first time with Jesus, I feel like it was such a representation of God's faithfulness and goodness throughout the entire story, especially looking back now with the perspective of actually having a relationship with Jesus. Grew up in a home, parents were followers of Jesus in that we went to church on Sunday and prayed before a meal, but it being any deeper than that, where it was actual personal relationship or impacted our lives throughout the week, I would say it never got down to that level. So my experience of Jesus growing up was something that it was a place that we go to on Sunday, and that was about it. So grew up going to this, knew the stories, grew up going to Sunday school, was very in the environment. So I'd say it felt very comfortable to me. It was what I kind of knew, but there was no relationship, no experience of being in a personal walking day in, day out with Jesus.
So would you call that just like religion?
Yeah.
Is that it was
Yeah.
like Christianity was a religion to you? Or your
Yeah, I
family?
would say
It was-
like
or culture.
like the way I describe it now, or what I feel like I've heard about it, I was like, oh yeah, I feel like this is it. Is this like picture of moralistic therapeutic deism. So I was like, God's there to like make me feel good. There is a God, but like I don't really need to have a relationship with him. And as long as I'm kind of a good person, that's the whole goal to life.
Right.
So I feel like I very much had a God box maybe that I'd have on the shelf, and it was like, okay, well, if for some reason I felt stressed or anxious about something, I could take the God box off, but otherwise I could just leave him off to the side. And did I know who that God was? Like, not really. He was just kind of there. Technically, I knew him as like church on Sunday, but that was about it.
Right.
And I would say, like, especially now, I'm like, okay, I don't feel like I knew who that God was in the first place.
And so that's why your agenda said go to university, get a BA, make
Yeah.
money. Or
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was just like, it was very much that picture of, so even like backtracking a couple steps, that I feel like it was one that I was very much living a life turned in on myself.
Yeah.
Especially like beginning of high school. There was, I kind of walked through a pretty difficult and like deep road of depression, suicide, anxiety,
Wow.
being in that space of just, starting having the question of like, what is the point of life? Why am I here? And like I feel like it's kind of God's humor that I feel like all the things that I wrestled with are the epitome of young adult wrestling questions.
Yeah.
Of like, what's the point of life?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like there's any point to me being here. So that was kind of the question that started a road into depression and suicide. And then there was 2 moments for me, probably around grade 10, that was home alone. And I was like, okay, I think I'm done. Like, I didn't see the point to be in there. Didn't have any friends at the time. Didn't feel like there was a point to living. So decided, okay, I'm going to end my life. And at 2 moments at home, had a knife to my chest, was going to go through with it, and felt like I heard audibly no. And like would like freak out both times, like put the knife away, ran upstairs. And honestly more felt like a coward than anything. I was just like, okay, well, I can't do anything in my life, and then I can't go through with this.
Wow.
So like it actually led deeper into a depressive state. And then in the midst of that kind of grade 11 to grade 12, got introduced through a mission trip to Guatemala. But then on that mission trip was all the popular kids for my class. So that kind of introduced me to this friend group where I was like, okay, finally I feel accepted, I feel loved. But then with that space came that they were the party crowd. So I got introduced into this whole world of partying, drinking, getting into just like living for pleasure, kind of being the like peak. And I was like, oh, I love this. So like very much like went down that road.
How'd you get connected to a missions trip?
Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah.
Like, were you attending a Christian school?
Yeah,
I
I was attending Surrey Christian School at the time.
Okay.
And then I was one of the guys there. He, I think, had pity on me that he was like, okay, I see Matt as like, he's the outside guy that has no friends, so I'll invite them on this trip. And that was kind of like the foray into like the friend group, like was very introverted guy. That trip was like, went from 100% introvert to 100% extrovert, very much in like an overreaction of like, well, if I'm outgoing, then people will like me. So went fully into that whole world.
So some people might be surprised that a Christian school has a party crowd.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's
Hello.
the niche. Yeah, it's like, yeah. Just so you know, it does exist. So yeah, was very much in that space then of like grade 12. Wasn't. I feel like that was the interesting part. I was like, I never felt like I was against God or Christianity. It just felt like I could have him on the side while having everything else that I actually wanted.
Yeah.
So I could keep God for when I wanted him to influence and help my life. But other than that, I'll just live my life for myself.
He's a boss, but not a manager.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe more a helper. I don't know if I put him at the level of even being that.
Yeah.
So I think it was like very much, in that space of, okay, well, what do I want to do with my life? What would be fun for me? kind of going into thinking about university. And then I think in God's humor, Trinity Western was the only place that I ended up getting into that year. Like applied to a bunch of other schools, and all that year, all the other programs I applied to, they didn't happen the year that I was going in for some reason. So like applied to like film school at CAP, and like that year they just didn't have that program. They didn't do it for that 1 year. So I was like, okay, Trinity was the only place got into. And I feel like it was one of those, like, didn't go kicking and screaming, like loved, like when they call them preview weekends, and where you kind of get to go and experience what campus life is going to be like. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. It was so much.
Were you on campus? Were
Yeah.
you in the dorms?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it was just like one of those, I was like, oh, this is like awesome. Like I love the community experience. It like felt so much fun. So it was like felt like I was against the influence of being in a space that was God focused.
Uh-huh.
It was just like, okay, I don't see the point of me participating in any of this. So then was going, and first few years there, I feel like it was this space where I would party a little bit, but then still go to church on Sundays. For some reason, that rhythm was always baked in. And then with the freedom of now being on campus, that rhythm slowly started to be pushed away as drinking and partying and going clubbing, that started to increase. All the while being a friendly, fun, outgoing guy. Like I would say that was kind of, I tried to live within both of those worlds. And then I went in from like in the middle of my third year, so looking into my fourth year, I wanted to be an RA, so resident assistant for a dorm on campus. And was like chatting with some people about like, oh yeah, I'm interested in doing this. I really feel like it'd be a good opportunity. And then the director of the building that I was in kind of caught wind of that this is something that I wanted to do. He was like, hey Matt, would love to like be able to meet with you. And I meet with him and he's like, yeah, Matt, I would never consider you. He's like,
was that hard in your self-esteem?
Yeah. Oh no, big shot to the system. It's actually wild. Like I talked with him since then, and he's like, yeah. He's like, I said that. He's like, I had no idea. He's like, that was very rude of me. Awesome. He's like, well, it woke me up because I was like, it was one of those moments for me where I was like, okay, it's still very self-focused, but it was like how I'm living my life is not getting me what I want. That was very much my like reflection, and I was like, went into the Christmas break. Reflecting on that was like, okay, well, drinking and the friends that I had was leading me to this life that is not getting me the things I want. And honestly, I don't really know how, other than God's grace. Like literally went into the spring semester, cut out all the friends that I had, and cut out drinking like cold turkey, which I don't think.
And that was because you just felt like you needed to get a better life.
Yeah. Like, I was just like, oh man, like I really wanted to be an RA. So I'm like, I'm actually like, I'm going to change.
Nobody said to you that you had to be a Christian to be an RA.
No. And it was interesting. It was kind of what replaced it. Then like I got pretty big into like the self-help motivational speaker, that whole world kind of replaced it. I was like, okay, well, let me like better myself, like manage my life, like actually just really pour into becoming like the best version of myself. That was kind of the driver. And then in that space there was a chapel, probably I think it was like beginning of February, 7 years ago, that they were announced at the end of it that they were doing a Habitat for Humanity trip to Hawaii. So like make this announcement.
Sign me up.
I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. I'm like, I'm broke. I'm going to Trinity. So not happening. So yeah, they have like a table booth outside, like announcing it. And one of my friends was running the booth, and she was like, hey, you need to come on this trip. And I'm like, no, can't do that. Don't have the money. Didn't think twice about it. Left. And then that same person, she's at the Trinity gym, they have somebody that lets you in, like front desk person who lets you in. And she was that person. So every time I came into the gym that week, she'd be like, hey, you need to come on this trip. And I was like, nope, can't do it, Aaron, can't do it. And then it was on the Friday of that week. And she's like, Matt, I'm not letting you into the gym until you at least talk to the person in charge about this trip. And I was like, okay. I'm like, so like, it's honestly kind of despite her. I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to him. Talk to the
will
guy.
you let me in?
Yeah,
to my
yeah,
workout?
no, legit. And it was like, talk to him. Literally, the guy, probably the most sweetest, most convincing guy ever. So convinced me to come on the trip. He's like, Matt, money can't be the reason you're not coming. So he was like, you need to come on this trip. We'll figure out a way. So was able to go. Was still in the mindset of we're going on a trip to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Not I'm going on a trip to meet with Jesus. So very much was in that space. So go on this trip to Hawaii. And then the first night there, Paul Thiessen was actually, some people maybe know him as Paulie Thiessen.
Yes.
He
Grew up
was
here
on the
at
trip.
CLA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was on the trip, and he was like, I feel like we're supposed to, like, let's, like, gathered all the group of guys. We'll go down to the beach together. We're in Hawaii. And he was like, I feel like we should pray over this trip and what God might want to do on this trip. And in that first prayer, first night there, felt like I heard Jesus for the first time being like, hey, you know about me. You've heard about me your entire life growing up, but I actually want you to follow me. And it was like one of those like light bulb moments of like that prayer then turned into confession for the first time for me, where I actually like was able to confess a bunch of the things that I had done to that group of guys. And then it was just this massive prayer of like, okay, God, we want to meet with you over this trip. And it was one of, now talked to the organizers after. It was also like an anomaly trip in that all the resources for building the homes didn't show up.
Oh,
So
wow.
we just had this week essentially of this group of young adults being like, well, what does it mean to follow Jesus together? So that was kind of my foray into it.
Oh,
Of this
you were
like
born again?
moment. Yeah. This moment of being like, okay, like this is like a following thing. This is not just like an idea in my head. This is actually something of like, I need to live it out in a community of people. So I think having that entrance into the kingdom of like it being an encounter with the person of Jesus and an invitation into then following, I think that has been something that has very much marked then my following
sounds
journey.
New Testament.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we got to keep moving here. So all of a sudden, you're a follower of Jesus. You're nearing the end, actually, of your Trinity Western experience. And you start to think, what is my life calling?
Yeah.
And you experienced a baptism in the Spirit. You had these powerful moments with the Spirit. What happened then? How did you kind of get called into ministry?
Yeah.
And Matt, what was your like major at Trinity? Like, was
great
the
question.
goal of your heart, was the desire like I'm going to be a millionaire?
Yeah.
I hear that from Trinity grads all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to make $1 million.
Well, they have to pay off
I'm
the $1 million they spent. So,
Yeah.
So it's
first you
actually
have
it's
to pay
mostly
off your
debt.
school debt.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
was your
But
BA
what was
in?
the trajectory?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like,
100%.
somebody said in the book of Acts, nobody actually did what they wanted to do. So God gets a hold of your heart and redirects you. But what was the plan? The original plan?
Original plan was physio. So like went into like human kinetics degree. Original plan either physio or chiro, probably sport physio being kind of the main goal. And then it was actually a month after getting back from the Hawaii trip, Paul again invites us to come out to CLA Young Adults. He invited the whole team. He was like, hey, you guys we've had this experience together. Let's all continue the relationship by coming to
Shout
Young
out to
Adults.
Paulie.
No, straight up. He's an amazing guy. And like in that space, so like started coming out to Young Adults. And then there was a Holy Spirit conference or Holy Spirit weekend. I forget how it was phrased. And I grew up, the church that my parents grew up in was very much a Father, Son, Holy Bible church. So that was new. To say the least. He's like, the speaker was talking about it. I'm like, this is the first time hearing stuff. Yeah. I was like, the Spirit can do what? Like, this is wild. And then at the end, the speaker is like, okay, what I'm wanting you to do is that we're going to actually invite the Spirit to come and speak to us. So what you're going to do is you're going to invite the Spirit to speak to you. And then after 10, 15 minutes, then I'll ask the Spirit what he's saying to the room. And then I'll speak it out as confirmation. And I was like, you could do that? I'm like, that sounds crazy. Like, it's a wild trick. So very much going in so cynical. Like, I was just like, there's no way this is a thing. But I'm like, okay, I'll humor the guy. So I'm like, God started following you. What would you have me do with my future now that we're doing this? Like, do you want me to do something? And first thought, plant a church. And I'm like, okay, I'm in church, so that's probably why I'm thinking it. Like, I'm just immediately dismiss it. And then he starts, going around, and it's like, I feel like you could see it all coming. Like, the story's playing out. I'm just like, everything he's saying is just like, it's so specific, and like people are coming up for prayer, and then he's like, okay, there's someone in here, you've asked about your future, and God's calling you to plant a church. And like immediately in that moment, like I freeze up and I just start sweating profusely. Like I physically feel like I can't move. And then the very next one, he goes, there's someone in here and you feel stuck and wet. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this space. So like tap my buddy. I'm like, I feel like I can't move, but can you pray for me? So big moment. Apparently not enough for me, because I was just like, okay, well, I think he just wants me to get involved, like volunteering. Like that's probably what he wants me to do. I just like didn't engage with that was maybe a new trajectory that Jesus was calling my life into. And then over the next 8-10 months, he put 3 or 4 people in my life. Actually, it was every time because CLA wasn't my home church on Sunday. It was just, Trinity, very much you just go kind of where I didn't have a car. So I just followed where I could go.
Where it was free.
Yeah, exactly. So then it was very much, but every time I came to CLA, someone would come up to me with a prophetic word after the service and be like, hey, do you believe in words from God? God's either calling you into ministry, or God's calling you to be a pastor, or God's calling you to preach. And then I even had a guy, one of my friends, who like it legitimately a cessationist, like doesn't believe in that. Was like, hey, like I don't know why, like we were praying together and I feel like I like saw Billy Graham and I saw you interchangeably with Billy Graham. I feel like you're supposed to preach. I'm like, dude, you don't even believe in this and you're telling me. So I was like, but eventually got to the point where I was like, I'm actually being disobedient if I don't actually move my body and self in a direction of following this. So decided to stay one more year at Trinity, added a Rels minor. And then joined him with the Way church plant as like, okay, well, let me actually start moving in the direction of learning about how to do this and stepping into this call. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you haven't listened to last month's Orange Pew with Jason Ballard, listen to it. But so you involved yourself with the Way. Yeah.
So it was one of those, as the calls started getting confirmed more, had conversation with Jeremy King and then eventually with Jason, and started getting to know the team more, and was pretty heavily involved through COVID, which was super fun. Being able to be on the film.
To plant a church.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
The worst.
Yeah. So I feel like got to learn a lot on the back end of like, okay, how do we actually start a church? Which I feel like that information and that experience is going to be like such a valuable time, and such a time that I get to look back on, of like actually seeing a church birthed into inception. Mm-hmm. Like I think that was just like such a beautiful experience, even in the midst of, okay, this is probably we'll never have a church planting experience ever like this again, hopefully. So very much look back on it with fond years.
And then there was an opportunity to work at young adults.
Yeah.
So the very place that you were first exposed to the gospel and with friends, Pastor Bryce was looking for some help. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So out of being involved with the Way church plant, because they were so new and so fresh, had an opportunity for a job opened up at Village Church. And had a friend that told me to apply, and was processing it with Jeremy and Jason. And they were just like, dude, honestly, like we know your call into ministry, and just where we are at in the church planting space, we will probably not for a while be able to hire someone with as little experience as you do onto the team. So they're just like, hey, go like get experience. Like we will send you, we love you, empower you to go and do that. So went and helped out with young adults at Village Church for just over a year and a little bit. And was, crazy valuable experience. Like I feel like, especially the context that they're in, I feel like I learned so many things from them, just even the size and scale of how to do church and ministry well and all of this. And then just over a year in, me and my wife, we kind of felt this invitation that like maybe we're actually being called out of the space we didn't know what to. We just felt like it was kind of over the span of a week of being like, okay, I feel like we're being called to leave Village. Didn't tell anyone about it. Didn't really know where we were at. And we were kind of on 2 separate pages. So we're like, okay, let's fast and pray about it and see kind of where God's wanting to lead. Because we had kind of we'd talked about it too much at that point where it's like, okay, we're not going to get on the same page. So we're like, let's have Jesus intervene and he can tell us what he wants us to do. So we decided stop talking and we'll fast and pray for 3 days. And then if we're on the same page after the 3 days, then we'll just go whatever direction that he ends up saying. So after the 3 days come, we both feel like, oh yeah, we're supposed to leave. And for some reason, we feel like we're supposed to leave relatively quickly. Day after that, haven't told anybody, and we have decided with nothing open to go to. Day after that, I'm grabbing coffee with Bryce. And he's like, hey man, I know you already have a job, but I want to offer you a job with young adults. And this coffee was one that had been rescheduled from a coffee they were supposed to have a month before. And he was like, which then he wouldn't have had the job opportunity if we had the coffee then. So it was very much like this pull as we were trying to discern, okay, is this God and is this his movement? It just felt so confident that like, okay, yep, this is something that the Spirit was very much opening the door in. So I was able to, step in on the team supporting Bryce with young adults for just over a year, and then moved on to
this. We're going to talk about young adults at CLA because that's a big chapter right now. But both Doug and I have underlining motivation in doing the podcast that it would not just introduce people or celebrate people, but would be instructive. One of the things I really believe in and I see in your story. And Doug might want to comment on this from a Summit Pacific perspective, but young men and young women early in ministry need a variety of experiences to help forge character, ministry philosophy, understanding of what their call is. And so I see the Trinity playing a role in that, the Way playing a role in that, Village playing a role in that, and then CLA playing a role in that. And I remember you and I meeting, and my strong encouragement to you to begin to experiment with a master's degree that would continue your training and process of credentialing with the POC. But I really appreciate that. I think that's a really important lesson. Hey,
I what I appreciate about you, Matt, just watching your life, like I think when we've talked about this before, when we use the term called, if you go to Timothy 3, verse 1-7, there's a list of character traits there that I think are foundational before we use the call word. And I think even though in the moment, like I'm sure that when you talk to Ballard and about having a role at the Way and them saying, we're not ready. Like, it's easy to say that, but I'm sure that there was something inside of you that was like probably disappointed.
100%.
But what that does is if we can walk through being squeezed a little bit of pain, a little bit of discomfort, because sometimes that's the only way that we learn, but yet keep a soft heart and move on. I think those are the character things that refine us, even in the first few years of being in ministry. And I see that in you, Matt. Like the very first time that I heard about Matt Bender was actually from a student from Summit. And they said, Doug, do you know Matt Bender? I said, no, I do not know Matt Bender. He said, he's just intentional and he shows up and he's a person of his word. So I think being squeezed, discomfort, and we've all felt that in ministry, is really important, in those first few years. So Derrick, you're spot on. Yeah, and I think, but to keep soft, right? To keep open to the Spirit and not become crusty and bitter and just believe that God's got a plan somewhere.
That's faith, right?
Yeah, faith.
It's Abrahamic faith. When you were talking about you and Whitney having this moment.
Shout out to Whitney.
Yeah.
Big shout out.
Amazing wife that God has given you. You were Abrahamic. You're like, okay, we're leaving and we don't know where we're going, but we trust God. And then God starts lining up things. And we're very grateful as pastor of CLA in all of CLA's various expressions. I'm very grateful God brought you here, and then you moved into full-time position overseeing our young adults.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit now about that experience. You've been here a couple years, and tell us what it's been like to pastor young adults. It's a very interesting demographic.
Yes. Oh man, I feel like honestly, it is the biggest joy of my life. Like I feel, I'm trying to say this in the least pious sounding way, but when I think about, like, okay, even a lot of my friends, they ask me kind of like, where do you feel like the trajectory is for you right now? Or like, where do you feel like you see this going in your life, specifically ministry? Like, do you want to be a lead pastor? Like, it's, kind of the classic, especially Bible college questions. And I just feel like that right now feels like a distraction because I feel so called specifically to the young adult generation right now. And I don't know if it's like a specific burden on my heart, specific space of, I think also the combination of like wirings, personal story and testimony, like that mix.
Yeah, it's like
together.
Everything in your life has prepared you for this expression of ministry.
And like the specific, even just like specific wiring and personality, like I'm like, okay, this specific moment in history, this specific time in the church, like I'm like, the fact that the church is in like decline for me isn't a like depressing stat, because I'm like, well, if you look at every move of God throughout history, that means that we're like just on the cusp of a next move of God. Because that's always how he ends up working. Is the time when it's darkest, that's when you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then it's the funnel forward. So I'm like, I think it's more I'm like a little bit like pinch me. Like I'm like, God, thank you that I get to live now versus 20 years ago when it was like at the start of decline and then everything was just depressing after that. Like I'm like, God, thank you. So like I feel like for the space of young adults wrestle with flakiness, and the struggles that they're going through are like deep and profound and painful, and also you're doing that all in the midst of so many of them. One of the spaces they've been hurt by is the church. So you're trying to tell an alternative story without being soft at the same time. So like I feel like being able to engage with that, like I feel like it's such an honor and such a privilege, and is one that I like even this morning I had a young adult text me, well actually he texted me at midnight last night, got it this morning, and they were like, hey, can we talk? And I was like, oh no, something bad has probably happened. And he was like, no, like I was just wanting to get baptized and give my life over to Jesus. I was wondering if you can help me with that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. That's like, I feel like that right now, especially like God is doing something, I think specifically in the young adult generation at like this current moment, which feels different to even a year ago. Like I feel like a year ago you were starting to maybe pop up and you'd hear the conversation every once in a while, of like either like the hints or the rumbles of like, okay, I think God's moving down in the States on this college campus, or like God's moving over in like this spot over in Europe, or God's moving. There was this little moment, this window of his invitation. But I feel like right now, like 2025, like it feels like that is becoming a way louder voice. Like especially even in the space of our young adult community, like seeing the genuine hunger, not just of people that have been in the church, which I think actually it's the people that have been in the church are getting outpaced by the people that are coming in from outside the church, because there's just such this hunger of like, okay, we've tried everything else and nothing else works. And I think like that space, especially of like this genuine hunger of like, actually the world's story is falling apart. And I think even like with even like psychologists or like books like The Anxious Generation, it's like the world is actually catching up, that the world's narrative is crumbling. Like it's not a solid foundation to build a life on. And I think you're seeing this wave of young adults that actually, I think through the power and beautiful redemptive side of technology, like they actually have a decent amount of knowledge, sometimes not helpful, but they actually have the front running knowledge space. So that actually they're having and listening to people like a Joe Rogan, who's having all these people on his podcast that is like very secular dude,
Yeah.
but then he's actually having this invitation of like, maybe there is something transcendent. Like it feels like there is a God. And then it's actually through other people's experiences, they're actually having this, wait a minute, like there's more to life than my current bubble of experience. I actually need to be living for more. And then it's actually I think it's the curiosity space is
I was
leading
going
a
to
lot of
say,
adults
how would
back
you?
in.
What words would you use? But curiosity,
100%.
is a big one.
Dissatisfaction.
Dissatisfaction
would be
with the broken
massive
world.
one.
Yeah. Now, just CLA is a bit unique because of its size. So we have a young adult ministry. You've got Kwantlen down the street. You've got Trinity Western down the street. Then you've got Fraser Valley University over there, Bible College over there. Like it's there's a lot of young adult age students, and then on top of that, you've got CLA young adults who are in careers looking for answers and friendship. Right,
Massive.
like some people might be coming down to Fraser Valley to go to university, and they're coming from, I don't know, like say Kimberly or something, and they don't have any friends.
Totally.
So then they start looking for other maybe positive relationships, just like you did when you
100%.
became a follower of Jesus. You talked about that. Yeah. So how does the young adult ministry appeal?
Yeah.
And how did you set it up to meet some of these needs?
Yeah. It's a very interesting question, and again, trying to say this in that this could be very wrong, but this is my working theory at the moment. Because it was kind of, as I got into it, I had a bunch of conversations with a lot of other young adult pastors of like, okay, what are some tips that you got for how to do this? I'm very new, and most of them were like, well, it's community. Like community is the reason that they're coming, so make sure to build spaces that people can encounter community. Right. Had a mentor that kind of introduced at around roughly the same time as that thought being introduced. That he was like he's like the danger of community being the focus only. Yes, is that a lot of times the thing that will get people into the kingdom will actually get them into second soil conversion, because it's like what then introduces people into the community is that they have their meaning void being met, they have longing void being met, they have this space where it's like they actually now belong to a group of people, but actually doesn't get into the root of sin in their life.
So it's a poor substitute.
Yeah, it's a poor substitute.
Much better.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's second soil. So then actually, when the word starts pressing up on their life, telling them to live a certain way, then they end up leaving, which I think so much was, especially as I look back even on the people that I graduated with from Trinity, so many of them are not following Jesus anymore, because I think Trinity did a beautiful job of making people feel belonging in community, but actually never got into the root of actually dealing with their stuff before Jesus and actually getting saved from something into life. So I feel like then that has very much framed my philosophy, I guess, of how do I want to participate with Jesus in building a community or building the framework for a community, where I'm like, okay, we are not here for community itself. That's not the driver. Right. We're here for Jesus, and we're here for meeting with Jesus, and we're here for people getting saved from death to life in Jesus. Right. And then it's actually the gathering of everyone having that experience together that will lead to community. So almost community will be the accidental byproduct of this group pointing at Jesus together.
So what would be the 2 or 3 key elements to help them connect with Jesus?
Yeah.
What did you try to build in?
Yeah. I'd say our 3 kind of main drivers. One is God's word. Okay. That is like, it's being a people that are just obsessed with the word of God. The other is being a broken vessel. So like one thing that I will probably, and I probably say it too much, they're probably annoyed at how much I say it, but it's like, is the importance of humility, the importance of dependence, the importance of sacrifice, the importance of confession. Yes. Being in that space of actually being like, I actually am not able to do this on my own, and I need Jesus to come and actually be Lord of my life. And And then the third one would be adoration of Jesus. So it's like actually, and having those three things are actually a space that is then the invitation or sets the stage for the Spirit's work in the community.
That's beautiful.
So
Yeah, no, I think it's actually different than what you usually hear, because you usually do hear that, we just need community, we need one another,
Or we needed the
but
gathering.
you go way
I thought you
beyond
might
that.
say that. I thought,
Yeah.
well, Thursday.
Yeah.
But you didn't. You said more hunger attributes.
But I have an observation. Like
Yeah.
a couple months ago, I was here at the church on Thursday night and doing something with Recovery Church, and I was in the kitchen, and then I heard a noise, like it was like a Jesus hum was taking place, and I walked into the conference hall, and I was just taken back. It was just full of young adults, and it was just like there was a vibe going on. And I know that we don't. For me, I'll preach to 5 people the same way I preach to 3,000.
Yeah.
But numbers, there's something in the numbers. There's something stirring, Matt. But let me just make an observation, and then maybe you could speak to like the CLA network about it. Is that I think besides those 3 things that you said, I also pick up that your philosophy is big on the presence, like not just. Like you want the presence of Jesus there, but also prayer is massive for you. And so maybe talk how that has like, how have you put that into we got a few minutes left. How have you instilled the need for prayer? Like it's probably coupled with humility. And talk about the presence thing. Like how have you worked that into the young adult ministry? And then maybe just,
100%.
I don't know, look at a camera. I feel like we're on televangelists, but encourage CLA, like encourage us. Why should we pray?
Beautiful. I'd say a big part of it comes out of, came out of the space of prayer, of like, okay, Jesus, what do you want this, like the driving vision or framework for this group of young adults to be? And I feel like it came out of Psalm 24, of being a generation who seeks his face. And it was actually was led there, and then as I was doing deeper study on Psalm 24, realizing that was the psalm that was the inauguration moment of David bringing the Ark of the Covenant back into the temple. So it was like through study of this space of being like, okay, actually, no, the presence of God actually needs to be the center of this generation seeking God's face.
Beautiful.
The presence needs to be the center. Presence always needs to be the center. And then it was through, a bunch of deep study, both of that moment of David bringing the ark back, but then also the moment of the golden calf moment, where at the golden calf, it says that they worshipped Yahweh. They like built this golden calf and then worshipped Yahweh, or worshipped it as Yahweh. And so it's that story combined with David's story of bringing the ark back into the temple in Jerusalem, where at first he brings it back the same way that the Philistines moved the ark. So he tries to bring the ark back in his human strength and human capacity. And then, so mapping those 2 stories onto each other, that the golden calf is this epitome of us trying to name and build the presence of God and call it God as our like way of ushering his presence into a space, and like realizing how much of the temptation being that our human temptation in building a space for God's presence is to try and bring his presence in our own strength and in our own capacity. So then realizing the need then for that space is for me not to do it on my own, in my own way, but actually to allow him to dictate how he wants to come into a space.
And that's the adoration of Jesus.
Yeah,
part,
the adoration
right?
of Jesus
Lifting
space,
high.
100%. The adoration of Jesus space, that's the space of being an empty or a broken vessel, because actually I know I need filling from God's strength, not from my own strength. And then it's both of those that leads you into the space of dependence and prayer. Like I think, again, kind of going back to like this being the moment that we are in, is that we have the best version of church that man can build. So which kind of leads the only leftover space being, well, we need God to come and build his church again, because that space wasn't working. like even Saddleback a couple months ago now, they had this realization that it's like, okay, we've built this amazing mega church all on man-made strength, and it wasn't working. And then there was this moment that they called their whole church to 3 days of repentance and consecration, of actually getting back to like, no, we actually need to be dependent on God again. And I feel like that so much is like this picture of like, we actually need to get back to the space of prayer, presence, dependence, in the space of not making Christianity minimum entrance requirements into the kingdom of God, but making it this all-out pursuit of God's presence. That even like God desires so much to be with his people. So then the why for prayer, presence, isn't to work our way back into God's good graces. It's just responding to a love that was poured out on us in the same kind of measure. Just as, Doug, when you love me, that makes me want to respond to you in that same kind of way.
I love you, Matthew.
And it's like, I think it's that fueling response. So like even for young adults, it's less that I'm wanting to say, hey, now follow this list of rules and live a radical life for Jesus. It's like, no, realize how much Jesus has radically pursued you. And it's actually in that then you will live a life radically pursuing him back. So then in the space of prayer, prayer being the thing that we are made for, I think would be one of the fueling drivers for me. That is like, I think it's similar to the space that we were made for talking, we were made for communication. And that the Garden of Eden being this picture and epitome that actually are like, the thing that was lost was this picture of an instant communication and intimacy with Jesus, and prayer being the avenue back to that. Like Ian Bounds, he had this quote that I love, that he was like, it was worth the trip from heaven to earth for God to teach men how to pray. And in that context, he just said men and women, how to pray. And I'm like, I think there's so much beauty to that picture of like, even like the Lord's Prayer, like this picture of like Jesus actually showing us as humans how to engage with God. It's the only thing that the disciples asked Jesus to teach them to do, is how to pray, because I actually saw something in Jesus' prayer life that actually lives it out. And like that, all of his life was actually fueled by the space of prayer. But then I think even especially for a generation of young adults, and I know it's not young adults specifically, that struggle with this in the space of identity, especially, like there's a moment at Jesus' baptism that it says that while he was praying, the Father spoke identity over him. And I remember somebody who was saying that that so often we are wanting to have the voice of the Father speak over us, but we're not in conversation with him in the first place. And it says that while Jesus was praying, that's when the Father spoke. So I think much of even like the things that young adults, the things that a generation are wrestling with, especially when it comes to anxiety, identity, we're looking for this space of, well, God just needs to come and speak to me, but we're not actually in a conversation with him in the first place.
Now, I love how your pastoral ministry has led you to be catalytic in this generation for prayer and what you said, communion, the Garden of Eden, walking with God, experiencing Jesus. I also, as pastor, appreciate how you've been catalytic to other generations, spurring them on. And this leads us to our last point, which is Gather 25. So at the end of Missions Emphasis Days, in the beginning of March, there was a day, a global day. You became aware of this. You became the cheerleader for this at CLA and made CLA one of thousands of sites around the world where people could watch live and participate. So tell us about Gather 25, because that really comes out of what you were just saying.
But you noticed something about Gather 25, right? I remember at that Sunday after Gather 25 was done, you said it was Gen Z that's leading the way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there was a very real sense that Gen Z is it was like an opportunity for a mantle or a baton to be passed. And that Gen Z was picking up this baton, and that they were going to take the gospel to the whole world, and then he would 100%. Come. But yeah, I mean, I appreciated what I saw online and what I participated in the day that I was there. But tell us about Gather 25, how it came about, and what you experienced.
Which even I think there is so much, like even looking at the history of moves of God, it always seems to be the next generation that God starts stirring up to actually invite all of the generations in that moment to pray and cry out for him to move. Like it always seems to be either the youth or the young adults that he specifically wakes up always back to the place of prayer, in actually being like, no, we actually need to cry out again for him to move in our time and in our moment. And I felt like, yeah, Gather 25 was birthed out of this this dream from this person named Jenny Allen, who is the organizer of the If Gathering, which is this woman gathering in the States. And she had this dream of, well, what if God came back in 10 years? What would happen? And would we actually be willing to live all of our life with the framework of like that question being the driver? Like especially thinking about evangelism, especially thinking about, okay, well, there's 2.5 billion Christians as of the moment when she had this, and there's 5.5 billion people that don't know Jesus, and actually just having this, actually allowing the 5.5 billion people that don't know Jesus not to just be a number or a stat, but actually to allow it to burden us to the space of like, no, it's our invitation to actually respond and to bring the gospel to the world. So this day then being, well, what if we did something unprecedented? Or that was her language for it. Mm-hmm. What if we, like, would we be willing to set aside a whole day to see God, to share testimony of what he's doing around the world, to actually encourage each other and then equip and send out the 2.5 billion Christians actually into the world to spread the gospel to the nations? Kind of this what would it look like to try and essentially fulfill Jesus' prayer in John 17 of the unity of the church back around the vision of what Jesus called the church to be, and then actually to send us out into the world. So I feel like even that was just like, that was kind of the thing that really pulled me into it, or like really captured my heart, was like, okay, actually this gets to be this picture of a brief moment even, or like a glimpse answer of what the answer to Jesus's prayer could or would look like, of the church dropping the differences that we have with everybody, dropping the things that we're arguing about, dropping the things that we're fighting against, and saying, well, we know we are gathered around a few things, one being Jesus, the other being prayer, the other being mission, another being testimony. So like, let's actually just build a day around just hearing the beauty and goodness of Jesus, and then actually being sent out into the world in that space. And it was one for me, and I actually would love to hear your experience as well, Derrick, that I think it was one for me. There was a specific moment, probably halfway through, and there was a specific moment at the end. There's a moment, I think it was Peru was hosting. So how it was kind of laid out was all the continents would host for a few hours the world through the power of technology and filming and live streaming. So they would host a part of the live stream for these 25 hours of prayer and testimony. And there was one time where Peru was doing the hosting, and we were in worship, and there was they were singing in Spanish, but they had the subtitles were in English, so then all of us in the room were singing in English. And it was one of those moments for me, like I just started weeping, where I was like, this is such the picture of what worship is going to be like in new creation, like in the kingdom of God. Like it's going to be this picture of people from different tribes, tongues, and peoples actually all praising and lifting up worship to Jesus. And then I had the exact same moment at the very end of the conference. They sang the doxology, and it was this resounding, and how they had it set up. It was one of the most beautiful moments. I think like it's marked in my brain, where they changed the live stream, going from location to location every 2 seconds. And you just like hear in the background this change from like going from English to Spanish to Arabic to Romanian. And it was just like this, this chorus, all singing one note to Jesus. And I'm like, oh man, if that isn't what the church, like, especially in the division of our world, if like the church like unified this picture of like us all adoration of Jesus again, like all lifted up to Jesus, like it was beautiful. But I think specifically for me, like the UK's invitation for us to actually get on our knees and just cry out for Jesus to move again, and just to live there, and like don't allow the things that only influence us or like my sphere of concern to just be myself, but actually to be like, no, God, I need you to move in Canada. I need you to move in the world. I need you to move in the broken areas. I need you to move in the persecuted church. And actually to allow those things to like hurt you a little bit, like wound you to the space of being like, no, I'm actually going to weep for that person across the globe that I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, wow, okay, yes, that's what we need.
Beautiful, Matt.
I think that the Gather 25 focus on the persecuted church was one of the things that touched my heart. And hearing that in Nigeria, more people die in Nigeria for their faith than all the other countries combined.
Yeah.
And their ability to tell story and to motivate the church to pray for the persecuted church. It was really powerful. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being catalytic to bring Gather 25 to CLA. Thank you for hearing God's voice and for coming to our young adult ministry and then being used as God has used you in all generations, not just Gen Z. But Doug had said, look at a camera and give a final exhortation. Yeah. So this, as we close, goes back to you. Yeah. You look at the young adults.
Look at that one.
And just give them an encouragement, exhortation.
God wants relationship with you more than you know. And he is relentlessly pursuing you. And he is just waiting for you to respond to him with whatever you have. So invite him into where you are right now. Invite him into the space. Open your heart up to him. And I think the goodness of God, the faithfulness of how he is and how he's shown up throughout history is that he will move in your life. That he wants you to not just be an onlooker while history happens around you, but actually to participate in the history of that is going on and happening in this moment right now. And his invitation to you is you actually want to come in and participate with it.
Thanks for coming to the Orange Pew, Matt. It's great.
Thanks for having me.
Keep leading us.
Appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. And I hope that you'll join in the month of May as Doug and I try to bring interviews that inspire and teach and resonate with our soul like this one did. Thanks, Matt.
Love you, CLA. Love you, Matt.
Love you, CLA.
Thanks for listening to The Orange Pew. To stay up to date, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube podcasts. We'll see you next time.